Well, my first reaction was that I wasn't sure that I could even use something like that. I think that's the kind of reaction a lot of people have. You look, you see it, and you're like, "Wow, there's a whole bunch of buttons, but what am I supposed to do with all these buttons?" And yeah, I was really kind of weirded out, kind of, because I heard people using it, but I'd never seen one. And when I saw one, I'm like, "Whoa, that is weird, man." So yeah, I was kind of like, "Wow, that's really strange."
Really strange was my first reaction also when I first saw Hitbox. It just kind of blew my mind to see a controller like that that didn't have any type of directional inputs on it, but all buttons. So, before I get further into this interview of talking with different people about Hitbox, let's talk about why I'm exactly making this video. Controllers. Today they come in different shapes, sizes, and designs to the point to where it's virtually impossible to not find one that fits you. When I was growing up in gaming, it was always playing on standard PlayStation pad. Playing Street Fighter and Capcom vs SNK 2 all the time was my standard go-to and what I thought of when I thought of gaming. So much to the point to where I refused for a long time to play on a system like Xbox where the analog is in place of the D-pad. I couldn't imagine how in the world I'd play a fighting game without a D-pad. Fast forward to today and it seems to me that playing arcade sticks for fighting games is more popular than playing the standard in my eyes of plain old pad. Even though I might be stubborn as a mule in my thinking, it is great to see so much diversity, but out of all the controllers I've seen, one has stood out in my eyes above the rest. Hitbox. When I first saw it, my first complete ignorant thought was, how do you jump with that? So instead of continuing on in my wrong thinking of hating what I don't understand, I decided to talk to two players about the intriguing controller and their experiences with it. Let's see if they can teach me the ropes about Hitbox.
The Hitbox was actually like the first controller I ever had. I joined the FGC in like 16, right when Street Fighter 5 dropped, and I came from a very heavy background like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, PC gaming. So I hadn't been a console gamer for a long time, so pad was foreign to me. And I liked playing on keyboard. So when I saw the Hitbox, I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's like a keyboard, but that I can play on my consoles, you know? And it was just really cool. And I gravitated toward it really quickly because it was just ergonomically friendly. I like analog. I like digital inputs over analog. And I got joint problems, so like having that ability to play on that instead of a stick, which caused me issues, made it really easy to get into enjoying the genre the way I wanted to.
It's kind of a story involving like I was a pad player to begin with. I used a PlayStation controller, a PlayStation 4 controller, and one of the problems I had with it was I used the D-pad a lot, and the D-pad would get dirty, or they would just start not functioning as well as it normally would. And I don't know if you ever opened up a PS4 controller before, but in order to get to the D-pad, you basically got to go through the back and take everything else out, and then clean it or do whatever you got to do, and then reclose it all the way back. So even when I would do that, sometimes I would buy like a completely new PS4 controller, and I was having problems with that, and I'm like, I just bought this a month ago. So that was around the time I was committed to looking for another control scheme, and I was thinking about going to arcade stick, but I figured I wanted something that was still along the same lines of using a D-pad, just using buttons still. So that's why I switched to a Hitbox, because I was like, all right, I'm gonna try this. I had one of my buddies let me try one out at DreamHack Dallas back in like a few months ago, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go ahead and switch.
I knew when I quit League, because I just was not having fun competing it anymore. I was like, I want to do something kind of competitive, but that there's no variable factor, it's just me. So fighting games was a very natural stepping stone. And seeing as how I wanted something I was familiar with and that wouldn't cause me pain, having that keyboard option was no-brainer. Like, it was a super quick switch, just like that. Just grab it, bought it, immediately started learning it, because it was my first stick. There was no transition period. I didn't have to unlearn anything. It was very intuitive.
I will say that it is definitely more reliable, I'll say, than using a controller, using a D-pad, at least in my experience. I was having a lot of problems doing my inputs properly on a D-pad, and I mean, in addition to just like with just the malfunctions and stuff like that, it was still kind of difficult sometimes. And I mean, I actually have mine right here, so it's just pressing the buttons just straight up is a lot easier than, in my opinion, than just like kind of like putting your finger towards a certain direction and then hoping that you get the input that you were asking for. So I'm not trying to say that controllers in general are bad, but I just say that for me personally, this was a lot better because I got the results that I was looking for when I wanted them.
Yes, 100, without a doubt, it's impossible to argue that it isn't. Now, there is an argument to be made about comfort, right? Like if someone's used to stick, obviously when they pick up a hitbox, they're not immediately going to be back to where they were with the stick. But with not having to contend with analog inputs and it all being digital on button press, using like your micro switches, there is no mistaking it. If you hit down, you're getting down. You don't have to worry about checking a notch on a 4-gate or an 8-gate. You don't have to worry about not pulling the lever straight down. When you press the button, that's what you're getting. So in those 8 directions, you always know what you're pressing. So yeah, I would say that execution-wise, at least for the left hand for movement, it is much cleaner. And because of the nature of the position of the board, you can move your hands around what you need to. So like for SPDs, I will, instead of doing just left hand for SPD, I'll do like 1, 2, 3, and then press up in this button because it's easier to time it with one hand, which that flexibility allows you to kind of make up for the less than intuitive inputs like SPDs.
Okay, so I'll start out with the ones that feel more difficult to me. I'll say that for me, 2D games are a little bit more difficult than they used to be. On controller, on D-pad, 2D games are really, really simple. You just kind of motion your finger a certain way, and you got the thing. You got a DP input for a Dragon Punch or Hadouken or a Tatsumaki Senpuken, whichever, and it just kind of happened. But on here, it's a little differently because you kind of have to piano your fingers in a certain way in order to get certain inputs, and it's difficult. Like if you've never done that with your fingers before, unless you're like a piano player or something like that, it's really difficult to train your brain to do that. So that's why it's easier. I would say the games that are easiest for me to play are mostly 3D games like Tekken, specifically Tekken, because the inputs are usually like down, up, and stuff like that, especially for most of the characters. There are some characters like the Mishimas who use a little bit more complex inputs, but nothing ever really, you don't really end up doing like 720s or 360s or anything like that in Tekken, so I never really have to learn that, except when somebody says, hey, you want to play Guilty Gear, you want to play Street Fighter, I'm like, ugh.
So I think the game that feels the worst would have to be MK, and I think it's just because MK in general does not feel very good on a stick to me. It's very non-intuitive. The game is it's cardinal directions, not angles, and due to the dial-up combo system, I feel like it feels much better on a pad. Outside of that, though, like if I had to pick a game that was better on stick, I'd say like Windjammers, which is the frisbee fighting game. A game like that where you're top down, holding up on the joystick is much more intuitive than pressing down on your thumb. But for across the board, for everything else, it just feels better on the hitbox. Marvel inputs are more. Marvel inputs, you're actually too quick. You have to slow yourself down. For 2D fighters, having that as a jump button feels really natural. For Tekken, being able to duck cancel or crouch cancel and sidestep is super easy when you're just pressing buttons and you're not having to move the stick.
Okay, so I would say the cons are first off, Hitbox is kind of expensive. If you've only been buying controllers, a controller usually runs you about the most expensive controller I ever bought was an Xbox One Elite controller, and that was $150. The Hitbox is about $200. And if you want, and of course, you got to ship it, so that's another $20 for shipping, so it's about $220, like all rolled in. So I would say that would be the thing. Like the other con I would say is that sometimes your buttons might get disconnected just to transit and stuff like that. The wires sometimes come loose, so then you have to have a kit on hand to be able to open it up and then reattach everything. Because when I got my Hitbox, in transit, the start button wasn't working when I got to my house. So for about 2 or 3 days, I couldn't pause the game. I couldn't go and use my command lists in practice mode or anything like that. Yeah, it was. I was like, oh man, this is pretty messed up. So yeah, I think those would be my biggest cons. But as far as the pros are concerned, I think cleaner inputs, like they advertise it says cleaner inputs. I would definitely say cleaner inputs. You ever notice how, like, in you're playing in a tournament and somebody they desync their controller, and you find out they didn't actually desync their controller, and now like your whole match is messed up. You don't really have to deal with that, and that's for like arcade sticks and hitboxes, because you just unplug it and you walk off because you don't have to worry about it anymore. I would say also it's a good conversation piece. You know, a lot of people ask, hey man, what's with the hitbox, man? I've never even seen that before. So it's a good conversation starter, and just generally, I think it's really comfortable. I think in terms of both, and this is for arcade sticks and hitboxes, just having my hands like, you know, kind of just flat like that, I think is a lot more comfortable, I think, than, you know, the way I was playing before. So
my pros, obviously, it's ergonomically friendly. It just feels really good. It's more precise inputs. You don't have to worry about it messing up as frequently. It's once you get over that hump of getting into the headspace of using a keyboard, it is very natural. The cons, there are some inputs that just don't feel natural. SPDs and 360s are one of them. You have to hit all 4 cardinal inputs, and rolling your fingers like that, it takes a while to get used to not double pressing, because if you double press because of the cleaner, you'll just miss a cardinal input and it won't come out. Another con is that you are actually so efficient that sometimes you will just press shit too fast, like way too fast. And like if you want to do walk forward, down, walk forward, down, forward, Hadoken, sometimes you'll get a walk forward, down, forward, strong Hadoken. You will sometimes just get DP. And that's because you're inputting it too quickly because of how natural that motion feels. While with stick, you have that natural rest back to neutral, which gives you that small window buffer to not overlap those inputs.
Oh, definitely. I actually really like Hitbox. I've tried to go back to play on a controller, and it has not yielded very good results for me. I mean, maybe because I'm just so used to it now, but yeah, I think I'll probably just end up sticking with Hitbox. I think it's really fun to play on, and just like I was saying before, the inputs are cleaner. I feel like I'm pressing them. I mean, it's a little difficult at first because getting acclimated to a new control scheme. At it, when you're coming from anything, just about, is always a little weird. So, but once you get used to it, at least half used to it, like I am right now, you're just mapping your fingers to directions. So yeah, I will definitely say I'll probably be sticking with Hitbox. Oh yeah, I would definitely recommend this to people. It's really cool. It's any kind of, like I said before, any kind of like new control scheme takes a while to learn. But after you learn it, it's all good. It's definitely an experience learning how to play Hitbox. I definitely recommend it. It's not nearly as complicated as it looks. It's just a bunch of buttons, and you're just learning when to press the buttons and what right time, when to press them together. You know, left and right, up and right, back and right, down and right, stuff like that.
100%. And I'm biased, obviously, because I can't. But yeah, it's a very. Even if I didn't have hand pain, I could see myself naturally sticking with Hitbox. It just feels good. It works with so much. Tetris, fighting games, etc. I think it's a very worthwhile investment for anybody looking to get into the genre, and for people looking for something consistent and natural feel.
Thank you for everyone who has watched up to this point. We appreciate you so much. We have more content like this coming up ahead in the future, so in the meantime, enjoy the sweet sounds of some lo-fi hip-hop.